This time we'll read to you the preface in Chapter 1, Flight of Basa, Ecstasy Today by Dakota Walker. Preface. Our story begins on the edge of a calm and peaceful river village. Large river rolled stone gracing the river bank. A small remote village thrives in the wilds of classical Japan. The year is 907. Life has routines, as only few members of the village ever venture out. Many inhabitants will be born into the world and leave the world in this singular place. Very few temptations distract the river villagers, but this is soon to change. Tsubasa and his sister Kyoko are twins, having already lived for half a century, their family among the first to discover this village. The villagers have respect for the founder's children, Tsubasa and Kyoko. They come from a long line of bamboo cultivators. Resources are in abundance, with an endless supply of fresh water, fish, and happy people. The way of living allows for any hardships to naturally drift away. Anger is often minimal, as the villagers have a strong sense of being. Inevitable changes are about to make way in the small village. Not all simplicities of their peaceful town can remain forever. We take a step back in time to 10th century Japan. An epic journey begins at the turn of this page. What will come of Tsubasa and Kyoko? Chapter 1, or part 1, everything is in small chapters, but there's 4 main parts of this book. So Sakana, or fish, part 1, chapter 1. Tsubasa woke to the heavy rain bouncing off the grass and leaf-woven roof of his hut. A small handmade stove radiates heat to fill the room. He yawns and stretches his legs, arms, and widens his eyes. Tsubasa hears rustling in the cooking room, where his sister Kyoko is warming tea and cooking a rice porridge. She yelled at the top of her voice, "Basa!" "Yes," Tsubasa replied. "Are you awake yet?" Kyoko wondered out loud. Basa sighed and headed into the cooking room, where he looked at another clay cooking stove heating the room. The room becoming so hot that Kyoko had propped the door open. Cool air Basa needed and found rather refreshing. "Of course I am awake. How would I have said yes when you called for me?" Basa responded. Kyoko sensed the tension and sarcasm, so she went into questioning Basa. "Tomo and Akio were here late again last night. What are you 3 up to? I know that you 3 must be planning something foolish." Kyoko often speaks when she becomes irritable. Basa takes a deep breath. "We must do something with our lives," he responded with a sense of urgency and disbelief that Kyoko could not understand. "If you must know, we are going on a journey," said Basa. Basa flinched and feared her response, readying himself to go outdoors, looking forward to the solace of being out in nature. No peace to be had when Kyoko is upset. Kyoko would not stay quiet. "You are not thinking about that dumb old mountain again, are you?" she said as she stomped her feet, all while she cleans up after their morning feed. Kyoko is clearly in a bad mood. Basa turns away to look at the interior wall of the home, thinking about looking past it towards the mountain outside their village. Yes, father would want it this way. Basa stood, looking at the floor as Kyoko positioned herself between Basa and the wall. "How do you get to claim to know what our father would have wanted?" Kyoko challenged Basa's logic. "He is dead," Kyoko whimpered. "We do not know that," Basa said as he moved closer to Kyoko and held her to console her grief. Basa felt responsible for his sister's well-being. "All we know is that when mother passed, he took his sword and headed to the forest below the mountain." Basa tried to reason with his sister, Kyoko. She would soon stop listening and pretend the conversation never occurred. Basa refilled his tea with heated water from the clay stove. He bowed his head and left the room to go outside, exiting through the open door in the cooking room. It was a beautiful day to take a walk down the river. Many of the villagers were still in their clay-built huts, the air crisp as Basa ponders on the steam rising from his warm clay cup of tea. The morning conversation kicked Basa's mind into gear, and he considered his options, thinking about how his father had left their village 2 weeks before making his 88 years of living, how his mother died a week before his father's departure. Whispering to himself, mother was only 80 when she got sick, and the sickness outlasted her will. Kyoko and I were 48 now, 50. Neither Basa nor Kyoko have left the small river village. In truth, Basa and Kyoko never felt the urge to leave the village, and it was all they had ever really known. In their 20s, they got into a fair share of typical trouble, trying to fit in with the water village residents. Kyoko fell in love and quickly fell right back out of love when she lost her baby. She never talks about that time. Her false lover left the village soon after. Basa, thinking to himself, mumbles, I'm still not sure I know what love is. What I know is that I tried and failed 3 times. Basa could not help but laugh a little about his youth. Basa continued to walk down by the edge of the river. No one was around, and so he hummed an old tune he learned from his father. He could not recall the words, but sang softly anyways. Deep beyond the surface, oh rippling blue-green waters, where the fish swim, we live, we abide by the water. What we need is here, where the fish swim, across the rippling blue-green waters. Basa quickly returned to humming as he noticed some village women washing their robes in the river. Splash! He suddenly lost his footing and fell into the river. At 50, he could still embarrass himself as if he were still a young child. Collecting himself on the bank of the river, Basa's face bore red as the women from the village stopped laughing. Basa has always felt like he did during his youth. Most of the time, villagers acted and looked old by the time they were 50. Basa, and especially Kyoko, looked young for being 50. Respect Basa often held was in the most part because of Kyoko and their family name. The villagers adored her. Even though Basa was left in charge after their father's disappearance, the villagers admired her for her cooking and keen ability to clean a fish faster than anyone, and doing so with their eyes closed. No bones, no eyes, and no fins were entered a dish made by Kyoko. The same cannot be replicated for any other villager. The women envied her and would often take lessons from Kyoko. When a young woman entered the family lifestyle, she would often be sent to Kyoko. Basa found it fascinating that young women from the village would want his sister to teach them how to keep their homes humble and happy. Kyoko taught the women of the village how to cook, maintain their homestead, and ultimately to how to find joy in their day-to-day living. Kyoko is finishing up in the hut. She readies herself to weave bamboo into fishing traps, like her family has done her whole life. None other than her mother and father brought the practice to Utake village. Utake is the family name, and Basa named after his father, Tsubasa. Tsubasa Utake and Ishi Utake were the first to establish the fishing village and rightfully named the village after themselves. The two were 30 and 38 when they found the village. 2 years later, they gave birth to twins, Tsubasa, or as we know, Basa, and Kyoko.